definition of a refugee is a person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. The definition of terrorism is the use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit to achieve a goal. Although these words do not mean the same thing, they are often linked together in a way that hurts the reputation of refugees.
The United States has a global responsibility to accept Syrian refugees into our country. As citizens of the United States and the next generation of our country, this responsibility falls on our shoulders.
We will be discussing the refugee crisis in Syria and how our country feels about it, the benefits of immigration for the refugees and Americans, and take a look at their lives now versus how they could be. To start us off, Joe will be explaining the refugee crisis.
In 2011, armed conflict between the Syrian government and various opposition factions began, which, according to an online article from the Washington Post in September 2015 by Janelle Ross, forced about 9 million Syrians from their homes. At the time that this article was written, 6.5 million of those refugees were still stuck in Syria, while at least 2.5 million of those refugees have actually managed to leave the country. The refugees who manage to get that far then have to go through a 24-month or longer waiting period after applying to the United Nations for permanent resettlement. According to an online article at brookings.edu in March 2016 by Elizabeth McElvain, as early as September 2015, the Pew Research Center reported that 3/4 of Americans supported the Obama administration's proposition to accept 10,000 refugees into the country. 44% even said we should be doing more about the refugee crisis. However, after the terror attacks in Paris, public opinion swiftly changed directions. When asked how the United States should handle the crisis, 53% of Americans said that we should stop accepting refugees altogether. 69% of that was Republican, 36% Democrat. This indicates that Americans are still fearful of another possible terroristic threat happening in our country, even though statistics show that the vast majority of refugees are not going to be directly linked to any terrorist group. According to the Huffington Post, the U.S. has resettled nearly 800,000 refugees since September 11, 2001, and only 3 have been arrested for activities related to terrorism. That's less than 1%. Despite all this fear of Syrian refugees, there are many great opportunities for the refugees here that will not harm America, which Josie will now explain.
Another big concern for allowing entry of refugees is the financial obligation the United States will have to face. According to the Huffington Post, since 2015, the U.S. has provided $4 billion in humanitarian aid in Syria. Allowing more refugees into the country will allow that number to stop rising on such a massive scale. Also, a world news magazine, Borgen Magazine, claims that Syrians who are given the chance to work will earn taxable income which will be reinvested in the economy through consumerism. In fact, immigration can expand the tax base for the government. In an article from the New York Times, they talk about Syrian refugees are often directed to stay in areas that have a higher population of other Syrian refugees. They also state those who do not have family in the United States are placed where jobs are more plentiful and the cost of housing is low. Refugees will receive help finding work and housing, but they are expected to become self-sufficient within a year. With that being said, refugees are willing to work for their money and are not asking for welfare handout, they are asking for safety. According to the Century Foundation, over the last 40 years, the United States has welcomed about 3 million refugees from countries all around the world. The plan Barack Obama had to allow 10,000 Syrian refugees into the country has been put on hold ever since the Paris attacks. However, the people we are denying entry are fearing the same attackers we do. The only difference is they are stuck living in the same country as them. The Century Foundation states the United States can and should continue to protect themselves from terrorist threats, but it can do so while still admitting greater number of Syrian refugees for the resettlement. It is very easy to become one-sided about this topic when we do not understand what it's like to live the way that they do. Now Sarah will explain to you the horror refugees we are denying live with every day.
Imagine waking to the sound of gunshots after a sleepless night of listening to the sound of revolt ringing down your street. Imagine rolling out of bed and being forced to skip the majority of your morning routine. Can't shower or brush your teeth without clean water. Can't eat breakfast without food. Imagine walking in a large mass of your family and neighbors to a field outside your town in hopes of escaping that day's bombardment. But not even that is certain, because day by day, safe areas are disappearing. Imagine hearing about the neighborhood right next to yours that was obliterated by a shrapnel-packed barrel bomb, carelessly dropped from a government helicopter, excusing the action, saying, "We're fighting terrorists." A neighborhood full of people trembling in their basements, praying they would make it through the day. They didn't, and neither did 450,000 other estimated civilian casualties, 50,000 of which were children. That's comparable to half the state of North Dakota gone. Imagine feeling forced to leave your home. Imagine needing so badly to feel hope again that you risk your life to flee, because you realize if you stay, your chances aren't great anyway. Imagine paying a smuggler all you have so you can climb in the back of a truck with hundreds of others, unsure if you'll arrive at your destination or be abandoned on the side of a highway to die of heat exhaustion. A smuggler who gives a cut of your money to the very government that pushed you into that corner. Imagine climbing into a makeshift raft that could hardly make it across a pond and praying it'll make it across the Mediterranean Sea. Because if you can survive the odds, you have a chance at life. Now imagine the relief you'd feel learning you can come to America. Imagine the opportunities that would open up to you, the things average Americans take for granted. Things like a quiet night in a soft, warm bed, like waking up and brushing your teeth, washing your face, the chance to have readily available, sustaining food, the opportunity to go to school and learn, the opportunity to get a job with minimum wage and workers' rights, or most simply, and probably most importantly, the opportunity to live, to have a normal life, to feel hope instead of fear. Americans have the opportunity to make this a reality for Syrian refugees. Just because it isn't happening to you doesn't mean it isn't happening.
In conclusion, the global responsibility to accept Syrian refugees has fallen onto our shoulders. In our speech, we have discussed the refugee crisis, the benefits of immigration, and took a look at the before and after of their lives if they were to immigrate.
You can be the difference that makes that happen. Tweet the hashtag #SaveAleppo to our North Dakota politicians. Help these refugees escape the real terrorists. Now, if you will, take out your phones and get the hashtag started.
Thank you.